If you've been around my channel for a little bit, it should be fairly obvious that I'm a huge Fatal Frame fan. The series is actually my all-time favorite horror game series, the reason being that I think ghosts and the concept of haunting when done right make for the most horrifying experiences. That's why it was such a joy for me to go back into my PS2 collection and do the original Fatal Frame on my channel. And I have to say up front, this is more of a gush and less of a review, but there will certainly be some criticism sprinkled throughout. I discovered this series in high school and instantly became obsessed. I would spend many late nights with all the lights off huddled in front of the TV playing the first two games and getting scared shitless by creepy Shintoesque rituals gone wrong and the restless spirits unfortunate enough to be trapped in an endless cycle of reliving the horrors caused by aforementioned failed rituals. As I've said before, the devs of Fatal Frame understand how to do ghosts right, and reliving the original Fatal Frame demonstrated to me that they got it right from day one. In the original game set in 1986, we play as Miku Hinasaki, a spiritually sensitive girl who finds herself ensnared in the malice's vicious perpetuation of the calamity, a catastrophic outcome of the strangling ritual gone wrong. We'll unpack all that in a moment, but let's talk about why our girl shows up at the creepy Himuro mansion in the first place. Miku sets foot in the mansion in an attempt to find and rescue her missing brother Mafuyu, who in turn sets foot in the mansion to look for renowned folklorist Junsei Takamine. Mafuyu comes prepared though, brings along the camera obscura, which Miku will then find and use to fend off the numerous vengeful spirits who died here as a result of the failed strangling ritual known as the Calamity. Honestly, this is very solid justification for why our central characters come to this mansion in the first place. It all starts with a renowned folklorist, Mr. Takamine, who wants to learn more about the strangling ritual and what specifically caused the calamity. An aspiring folklorist himself, Mafuyu follows in Mr. Takamine's footsteps. And when Miku hasn't heard from her brother for 2 weeks, she decides it's high time to be concerned and winds up at the front door of Himuro Mansion herself. With the justification out of the way, let's do some unpacking. As mentioned above, the calamity is the result of the failed strangling ritual. The ritual fails due to the Shrine Maiden's conflicted feelings during the performance of the ritual. Similar to the other rituals featured in later games, it is absolutely imperative that the Shrine Maiden not have any attachments to the living world. The success of the ritual is crucial in keeping the Hell Gate closed so that there is a barrier of separation between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. This should remind series fans of Maiden of Black Water, which actually features Miu Hinasaki, Miku's daughter, as a central character. I'm not going to touch on this too much because we'll learn more about it when I get to the third game, but it's interesting that Maiden of Black Water revisits this theme of the Shrine Maiden with conflicted feelings, which only becomes cooler when you consider the connection between the games established by the familial bonds of the central characters. As a side note, this is honestly the main thing that makes the Fatal Frame series so strong overall. The familial connections that span generations and multiple rituals at the center of them create this overwhelmingly oppressive concept of the haunt that relentlessly grabs hold of you and refuses to let you go, even after the vengeful spirits have been placated in one game. But back to the main point. The strangling ritual fails due to Kyrie's, the Shrine Maiden's, conflicted feelings. Her tumultuous emotional state is actually so strong that her spirit literally splits in two. Her pure side devoted to the completion of her ritual duties represented by her child self, and her fallible human side represented by a more adult version of herself. You see, shortly before the time comes for Kyrie to take on her role as the Shrine Maiden in the Strangling Ritual, Kyrie falls in love with a visitor of Himuro Mansion, which is an impressive feat considering that she's been locked in a cell in complete isolation for the past 10 years. I'm exaggerating for effect here. She was let out of her confinement closer to the designated start of the ritual, which is when she meets this sexy interloper. But she was in fact locked away for 10 years. Fucked up, I know. Anyway, Kyrie falls in love with a visitor who bears an uncanny resemblance to Mafuyu, which is one of many hints at Miku's and Mafuyu's uncanny and unexpected connection to the Himuro family and the Strangling Ritual. But I'll stop there because, spoilers. Kyrie's falling in love with a visitor is a major concern to everyone because she cannot form any worldly attachments. As a result, Lord Himuro gives the order to have the visitor killed and his body hidden. Kyrie is told that the visitor simply returned to his village, but she discovers the truth when the visitor's spirit appears before her. So not only does she have to deal with unfamiliar feelings of love blossoming within her, but now she also has to deal with the guilt of thinking the visitor's death is the direct result of her forbidden feelings for him. It's no wonder this ritual failed. Hell, I'd manifest a spirit of malice to fuck these shitheads up too. And really, we put most of the blame on Kyrie, but that's unfair for multiple reasons. And the entire Fatal Frame series doesn't shy away from guiding us to this realization in every iteration. The Shrine Maiden in the original Fatal Frame, as well as her counterparts in the other games, is tasked with the impossible. For the sake of everyone else, she is expected to relinquish her humanity and her claim to a normal life. A life filled with joys and regrets, love and heartbreak. And why? Because there's a hell gate and someone's gotta plug it up? And she has to be perfect, which is often enforced by harsh conditions like neglect and isolation. but everyone else can just go about murdering looky-loos all willy-nilly and avoid any consequences, so long as the Shrine Maiden doesn't fuck it up for everybody else. Yeah, none of this is fair, and this is part of the reason Fatal Frame works so well. Make no mistake, by the end of the game, Kyrie is fucking terrifying. But there's also this incredibly potent pang of sympathy you feel for her. You come to regard her with a certain sense of pity because she's just as much ensnared in the perpetual cycle of the haunt as Miku is, and we know this because Kyrie's younger version literally begs Miku to stop her. But this is great writing, and this is why I will always prefer horror content with ghosts over demons. Unless you're going for a John Milton-esque configuration of demons a la Paradise Lost, they're often just evil. Ghosts, however, can be just as evil and malicious, but there's also an undeniable humanity about them that makes them so complicated and ultimately relatable, which only augments the horror experience. Because the scarier the ghost, you've gotta figure the more fucked up the stuff that happened to them while they were still alive. The Fatal Frame devs understand this, and boy do they take full, horrifying advantage of it every single time. With my gushing out of the way, let's get to some of the nuts and bolts of this game. The gameplay involves third-person exploration of spooky, dark environments with those nostalgic fixed-camera angles. You have to guide Miku through the Himuro mansion, picking up useful objects like healing items, extra film, and pertinent documents along the way. Now what's cool about that is that sometimes objects to pick up sparkle, but sometimes you get rewarded for being nosy and examining any old thing. Think that chest of drawers needs a good rifling through? Here's an herbal medicine for your trouble. Think that privacy screen might be concealing some extra film? Keep your peepers to yourself, you sick bastard. In all seriousness, I think having this strikes a really good balance that both rewards exploration and has a fair amount of gimmies to ensure you have enough healing items to get you through the game. And let's talk about healing items getting you through the game. That was not my experience, far from it. But y'all should know by now that this type of game is not my strong suit, because you're not always playing from a third-person perspective. When a malevolent ghostie comes to spoop up the joint, you've got to pull out your handy-dandy camera obscura and enter a first-person quasi-rail shooter type experience that pushes your reaction time ability to the limits. And if, like me, you have no ability in this area, well, you're fucked, plain and simple. I had to rely heavily on items due to my inability to react quickly enough. Toward the end of the game, I had several close calls, where I was fresh out of healing items and chock full of anxiety. But again, if you're like me, don't let that stop you from enjoying these games. Did I say some things to our girl Miku that I regretted later? Yeah, but you play these games for the story and for the horrifying experience and put up with the immeasurable frustration that goes along with it. And let's focus on the ghost fighting mechanics a little bit. Comparing the overall experience to the later titles, I think the team's first attempt at fighting with a camera holds up surprisingly well. This goes to show that they had a really good concept that they built upon in later entries, but the basic idea was such a solid one to begin with from day one. Do I wish we had the recovery lens like we get in Maiden of Blackwater? Abso-fucking-lutely. A player of my piss-poor caliber needs something like that to help him, her, or them along. But the basic premise of being able to power up the camera and use various functions to give yourself a strategic edge is strong right from the first game, and needing a resource pool of spirit stones in order to use your various special functions was both evil and effective. Like, fuck y'all, just let me spam the paralyze function once I've squirreled away enough points to unlock it. But that also made spirit stones that much more precious and integral to my overall strategy. Finally, I want to devote just a short amount of time to discussing the soundscape because I've beaten this horse to death on the 4th and 5th games, but this is where it all began. And similar to other aspects that are brilliant about the entire series, the first entry gives us that strong showing here as well that carries throughout. The music and sound effects are truly some of the creepiest I've heard in any horror game or movie. There's this one track that can be heard in the Demon Mouth that is creepy and foreboding to begin with, but then violins come onto the scene with some spine-tingling accented playing between two notes that ooged me out to the max. So many things about the soundscape just work so well, which makes it an even bigger shame that the English voice acting is god-awful. The delivery from pretty much every living character is flat and more devoid of life than the deadest of dead spirits haunting Himuro Mansion. And I'm not really sure who it is, but there's this one voice actor who voiced some of the male ghosts, and he's all enthusiasm and no talent. I was hoping it would be at least funny bad like OG Resident Evil, but everything else was so excellent that it came off more as an affront to the senses. It'd be like if you told the principal flautist of the magic flute to play a slide whistle. No, actually that might be hilarious, I take it back. Now I don't want you walking away from this thinking that, aside from the English voice acting, Fatal Frame has no flaws. It certainly does, and some of the gameplay aspects probably haven't aged very well, and definitely weren't improved enough upon as much as they should have been in some of the later installments. Seriously guys, maybe Miku should have crawled in the first game because y'all clearly never figured out walking. Be that as it may, to this day, Fatal Frame is some of the best ghost-centered horror content you will find in the wild world of video games. It also just has some of the best writing, period. For those reasons, it's nothing short of a masterpiece.